So this is another good question, but Ukraine is not actually using aircraft as much as you think to conduct these strikes deep into Russian territory. Now, every once in a while, they launch some sort of air-launched cruise missile or something like that, but more often than not, they're using drones. But there's a reason they are able to strike pretty much anywhere they want in Russia, but are focusing on refineries, weapons production facilities, the electrical grid, logistics hubs, and command and control nodes. It has to do with the type of fight Ukraine has calculated is the best fight to end the war. And that strategy is actually far different from Russia's. You see, Russia is waging a war of terror. The Kremlin has routinely fired missiles and drones at Ukrainian power plants, heating systems, grain terminals, residential districts, schools, malls, grocery stores, pretty much anything that has people in it, and innocent people nonetheless. Many of these strikes have little direct battlefield value because the goal is psychological. They want to freeze the cities. They want to keep the lights off. They want to make daily life unpredictable. They want to convince the Ukrainians that continued resistance is hopeless. So they pressure their government to give up and allow Russia to do what it wants. Basically, Russia has calculated that the strategy should be cause as much pain and suffering so that the Ukrainians lose all will to continue fighting and give up. Now, Ukraine, on the other hand, is pursuing a cost imposition strategy designed to degrade Russia's ability to fund and fuel the war while maintaining international support. Instead of copying Russia's attacks on civilians, Ukraine is using long-range drones and missiles to strike refineries, depots, and logistics nodes that directly support the Russian military and state budget. This strategy nests pretty well with the approach of Ukraine's allies, who are imposing ever-growing sanctions and embargoes on Russian goods and economic output. Russia is being degraded externally by Western punishment, while Ukraine is degrading it internally by destroying infrastructure. It also shows Western nations that Ukraine is not acting inhumanely. They're striking the means of war production while Russia is executing terrorist attacks. Unlike Russia, Ukraine understands that when you start conducting terrorist attacks on a population, you galvanize that population and lose credibility as anything other than a brutal aggressor. You're no longer this savior. You're no longer a protector coming in to free the people from their supposed evil government. And so the population rallies behind its government, in this case Zelensky and Kyiv, and closes ranks against the invader. And so with that understanding, Ukraine wants the Russian people to feel the pain but not be directly and constantly targeted. They want the Russian people to feel the economic woes and start asking whether any of this is actually worth it. The Kremlin cannot admit that the economic problems they are facing are because of its war in Ukraine, because that would show weakness. So they insist everything is fine. But the Russian people know it is not. But if everything is fine with the war in Ukraine, as the Kremlin claims, then the pain the Russians are feeling must be because of policies coming out of the Kremlin, not Ukraine itself. Meanwhile, Russia's terrorist attacks across Ukraine have maintained a steady state of rage and patriotism that fuels Ukraine's will to fight and their resilience. Furthermore, were Ukraine to attack innocent civilians the way Russia does, they would likely lose the backing of many Western supporters. So instead of taking that terroristic approach, Ukraine focuses on making this war unaffordable for Moscow. And this approach has worked before against major powers, including the United States and Afghanistan, the United States and Vietnam, the Soviet Union and Afghanistan, and more broadly, during the Cold War. Those states lost the political will, and some of them lost the economic will to continue fighting because their people were angry and exhausted. Ukraine is using a similar playbook: chip away at Russia's efforts internally so it becomes so painful that the Kremlin has to withdraw or face economic collapse or the political destruction of Vladimir Putin's regime.